There's an old saying in Israel that when the chief of staff of the IDF is against something, there is no way that the political level, the prime minister, the minister of defense, the Israeli cabinet will do it against the chief of staff of the IDF. And what we saw here is when the IDF is saying no to the plan to occupy Gaza City, is facing a huge problem. I think that he would never imagine such a collision.
Welcome to the Kraus Report. This week in Israel, an unprecedented public dispute is unfolding between Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Chief of Staff of the IDF, Eyal Zamir, over the future of the war in Gaza. Hamas agreed to release 10 living hostages when it gave a sort of a yes to Steve Witkoff's proposal, which is essentially Netanyahu's proposal. But then Netanyahu decided he wanted only a full deal, one that would bring the war to an end and that will bring all the hostages back. This is not what Netanyahu wanted until recently. He used to say that he wanted a partial deal. The Chief of Staff of the IDF, Eyal Zamir, who was nominated by Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, chose to publicly oppose Netanyahu. This scoop was published on Channel 13 News, and the journalist who broke the story is Eyal, who has been covering the army for many years. He will join us in a moment, and we'll also hear from Tal Shoham, a former hostage who was held by Hamas with Evyatar David, the hostage shown in the Hamas recent video where he appears extremely thin in the tunnels. Tal's children were also hostages, but first, Eyal joins us. Shalom, O.
Hi, Neria.
So you broke this unbelievable story this week about the chief of the IDF basically telling Netanyahu publicly that Netanyahu needs to do the deal, the hostage ceasefire deal, that this deal can happen thanks to the IDF's efforts, and now Netanyahu needs to take it. Tell me a little bit about this story because it's unprecedented.
Well, I think that what we heard this week is a public message from the Chief of Staff of the IDF, Major General Eyal Zamir, to the Prime Minister, to Benjamin Netanyahu. And there's a deal on the table. There's a hostage deal on the table. It's let's say, better than the original Witkoff offer. And you should take it because the IDF had fulfilled his goals by occupying, let's say, 75% of Gaza Strip and making the effort and making the circumstances that now it's better to do a half deal than no deal. And, in Israel, the chief of staff of the IDF is, I think, the most popular personality in Israel.
Everyone cares about the chief of staff of the IDF. Everyone loves him. He's the man who runs the war, basically, practically, on the ground.
The soldier number one of the IDF, the citizen soldier. And I think that Major General Eyal Zamir facing a very difficult situation, maybe unprecedented in the history of the IDF, because there's an old saying in Israel that when the chief of staff of the IDF is against something, against doing, let's say, an operation or some military operation, there is no way that the political level, the prime minister, the minister of defense, the Israeli cabinet will do it against the chief of staff of the IDF. And what we saw here is when the IDF is saying no to the plan to occupy Gaza City, as you know, the cabinet decided against what the Major General Eyal Zamir had said and voted yes for occupying Gaza City. And I think that even Major General Eyal Zamir asking himself, does Netanyahu really want to occupy Gaza City, or he wants Hamas to think that he wants to occupy Gaza City, like in the Iranian threat, let's say in 2011, 2012, when Netanyahu wanted us to believe that he wants to attack the Iranian nuclear facilities.
It's not clear whether he's using this as a threat in order to make Hamas cave in to his own demands for a deal or to end the war, or if he really wants to do it. So you're saying that it's not the public or us, the journalists, we don't understand what Bibi really wants. Also, the chief of the IDF doesn't know.
Exactly, and the chief of staff of the IDF, who is relatively new in his position, only only 5 months, and that the chief of staff
Netanyahu's
of
nominee, we should say.
yeah, and the chief of staff of the IDF that was not in uniform during the October 7th massacre, and the chief of staff of the IDF that Bibi Netanyahu chose him to the position. He is in a unique position now to say, on one hand, it's a strategic mistake to occupy Gaza City. Because of the danger to our 20 live hostage, of course, and he calls it a major strategic block, let's say, for the state of Israel. And on the other hand, Major General Eyal Zamir does not want to resign. He thinks that it won't be fair to the hostages, to the hostage family, to the people of the south, of the Gaza envelope, and to the soldiers, to the reservist soldiers of the IDF. So I think that he's facing a huge problem that he didn't understand, I think, when he took the job. And, he couldn't have said no to the offer made to him by Bibi Netanyahu a few months ago, only a few months ago. But I think that he would never imagine such a collision, let's say, with the Prime Minister and the Chief of the State of Israel and the Minister of Defense and the cabinet ministers.
It's also pretty amazing that he chose to put that message out there publicly. I think Zamir, the chief of staff of the IDF, understands that Netanyahu can drag the situation with the proposal of Hamas, which is actually Hamas basically more or less saying yes to Witkoff's proposal, which is Netanyahu's proposal. So Zamir understands that it can take him a very long time until he says yes to it. If he even will say yes to it, it's not clear what really Netanyahu wants. But this is unprecedented. You as a journalist, when you heard that story from your sources, you've been covering the army for so many years. How is it like for you? You broke the story on our main news show on Channel 13. How is it like for you hearing that story that Zamir is basically telling Netanyahu, this is the policy I think you should choose?
I think that this position of Major General Eyal Zamir, it's not surprising, but I think that as a nice guy and a guy that when he was chosen, appointed to the role of the position of the chief of staff of the IDF, many generals and journalists thought, he's too close to Bibi Netanyahu. He's Bibi's guy, and I think that he
got a lot of criticism, a lot of heat in Israel after he was nominated. People were criticizing him, saying he's working for Netanyahu.
He was for several years, 10 years ago, the military secretary of Bibi Netanyahu. He was very close to him. He was very, very close to Sarah Netanyahu, the wife. And you heard it yourself during the ceremony of the nomination of Major General Eyal Zamir, when Bibi Netanyahu told it publicly that 3 times he tried to nominate Eyal Zamir for the chief of staff of the IDF. He failed twice, and now he said it's time for the Zamir. It's of course an old saying from the Israeli Bible. Higia et Zamir. The time of the Zamir came, and only few months after, we started to hear the campaign against Zamir
by Bibi's people.
By Bibi's people. And tonight in Israel, the most, let's say, the closest media guy of Bibi Netanyahu said that maybe we should appoint another chief of staff of the IDF, a higher chief of staff that will be above the head of Major General Eyal Zamir. Now, we had 2 precedents in the Israeli history of the IDF from Yom Kippur War, when Major General Chaim Bar-Lev appointed to the Southern Command above the head of the Southern Command, General Shmuel Gonen Gorodish. And of course, in the Second Lebanon War in the summer of 2006, 20 years ago, when General Moshe Kaplinsky was appointed above the head of the Northern Commander of the IDF, General Udi Adam. So we had precedents in the IDF history. Netanyahu published an announcement, said we only have one major general in Israel. We only have one chief of staff of the IDF.
But it is true to say that the Prime Minister's office, I would say, were really pissed off after they heard your story the other night.
Yes, because I think that both the families of the hostages, and of course the political arena and the Israeli discourse, he listens to the chairman of the IDF, to the chief of staff of the IDF. He represents, I think, the last consensus in the Israeli society, the divided Israeli society. Nobody knows if Eyal Zamir is voting for this party or for another party. We don't know his political views, but we know his professional views, and his professional views were definitely against occupying Gaza City and for a new hostage deal regarding the yes that Hamas said to the deal of 10 alive hostages.
To the Witkoff proposal.
So I think that this publication that we have published in Channel 13 News the day before yesterday, I think that both the political arena, the generals of the IDF, the soldiers, and of course the families of the hostage listen very carefully of what the chief of staff of the IDF, Major General Eyal Zamir, has said to Bibi Netanyahu.
Oh, Heller, thank you so much for breaking this very, very important story. I think it's important to also mention that one of the things he said, Major General Zamir, he also said that an operation in Gaza to occupy Gaza will risk the lives of the remaining live hostages. Thank you so much for this story, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Neria.
Tal Shoham was held in Hamas captivity together with Evyatar David. A few weeks ago, Hamas released the video of David in the tunnels. He looked very thin and in extremely poor condition. Shoham himself was kidnapped, as were his wife and 2 children. In a special conversation, he talks about the urgent need to reach a hostage ceasefire deal, and also about his life after captivity, how the family is trying to heal, and how he speaks with his own children about their time in captivity and his time in captivity. How do you cope with that? Tal Shoham, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Neria, for having me.
I guess it's a really tough week for you.
Yes, it all began from Hamas releasing the videos of Evyatar David, one of the 2 that I was with all of my time in captivity, Evyatar David and Guy Gilboa Dalal. I was totally in shock from what I saw in the videos, and since then it's just haunting me, and I just have to do everything in my power to share the real truth of what is going on there underground in the tunnels, and the real face of Hamas.
How many weeks has it been since you last met Evyatar?
So I was released on February this year, so it's already more than 5 months.
And when you last saw him?
He was really thin, but not as much as now. He was really depressed. I tried to give him hope and faith that soon after our release, he and Guy also will be released. But eventually it didn't happen, and we know 5 months already has gone, and Hamas intensify its cruelty and torture toward the hostages. So he was in a really bad conditions then, and now it's even much more worse.
Were you shocked when you saw the images in the new video?
Yeah, I believed that although they actually told us, the terrorists in the tunnels told us that they are starving us intentionally by purpose.
They told
Uh,
you that.
yeah, they. I think that they didn't meant to, but one of them actually told us that it's a command that they received from above, and they told us that it's because Gazans are suffering, so we should suffer also. Although they also bragged upon them stealing the humanitarian aid from the people, so I don't know how it goes together, but this is what they said. And Evyatar actually suffered from scurvy, which is a really deadly and life-threatening disease of extreme vitamin C deficiency. And it's because of the starvation we went through. So now probably is really between life and death.
When you spoke to the terrorists that held you in captivity, when they told you that you don't get to eat almost any food, did they tell you that they're eating? Did you see that they're eating?
Well, while I lost 27 kilos of my weight, they didn't lose even 1 kilo in all the time I've been in the tunnels and even before. So I saw by in my own eyes that they are eating much more than we, and also they used to bring us small portion of rice, and we could see that they took out of it all the meat of it or the fish that was in that day, and they use it from themselves. So we saw it really clearly that they're eating much more and much more healthy. I know that they had their vegetables and fruits, and unfortunately they decided not to give any of it to us, but to keep it to themselves.
You can also see in the video that the hand of the terrorist that is handing food, this small can to Evyatar just for the video, you can see that he has a very healthy hand, like maybe a little, sort of like a chubby hand.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Evyatar is just so thin there.
Yeah, it's like a skeleton, a living skeleton. The thing that like bother me the most is that just few meters behind this hand that giving Evyatar the can of beans, there is a room full of food, filled with months and months of supply that the terrorists are saving for themselves. And as I said, they bragged upon stealing it from the people of Gaza, and they just stockpile for their use, in the same time starving to the extreme the hostages.
And when you hear about the hunger and starvation in Gaza, how does it make you feel as a person who was there as a hostage?
So
And
I
I guess
feel,
you're not looking away.
yeah, I'm not. I feel really sorrow for the Gazans that are suffering. But with that, I saw in my own eyes how Hamas piles up boxes of humanitarian aids from Turkey, from Egypt, from other countries, from the Emirates. I heard how Hamas terrorists are bragging upon stealing the humanitarian aid. And in the end, I think that the world need to understand that at October 7th, Hamas didn't just kidnap Israelis. He kidnapped the whole Gaza Strip and the whole Gazians with it. And only by disarming Hamas and deny this organization right to exist, the Gazians will have a real hope for better life and for normal lives and even maybe peace with the
So you
Israelis.
saw when what you saw when they had piles of food, you saw the names of the countries that were bringing this humanitarian aid.
Yeah, yeah, I saw it.
Wow.
Although I really feel sorrow about what the Gazians need to go through, but it's because it's a terror state ruled by terrorists.
It is so cruel. Can you tell me a little bit about your time? in captivity? How was it like when you were kidnapped? Maybe we should go back to October 7th and then a little bit of your time in captivity.
Yeah, so I was kidnapped from Kibbutz Be'eri. We went there, the whole family, my wife and my two children and me. We went there to celebrate Simchat Torah with my parents-in-law and a few more relatives of my wife. And we caught up there when the attack began. And the terrorists kidnapped me first. They took me out of the safe room and took me to Gaza. For 50 days, I didn't know anything about what happened to my family, if they murdered in that day or if they survived. But eventually, I discovered that they were kidnapped. Adi, my wife, and my two children were only 8 and 3 years old at the time. And on the 50th day, they have been released. And from then on, I knew that they are safe, and I need to do everything in my ability and power to survive it, the captivity, not only physically but also mentally and emotionally. So if I will survive, my wife and children will have a husband and a father to come back to. On day 34 of my captivity, the terrorists brought two more hostages to the place I was kept in, and it was Evyatar David and Guy Dalal. And since then, we became like a true family, brothers, not by blood but by same faith. You know, there is so much to tell about our captivity, which seems to be every time with the worst of the worst of humanity. You know, they found so many creative ways to torture us, not only physically but mentally and emotionally also, by starving us, by tell us lies about our families. Above ground, there was one of our captures that kept beating us, but he did it smartly, so there won't be any bruises, so nobody will see, even if a camera come, like a cameraman will come to the apartment, they won't see that we were tortured. He used to make fun on a Evyatar guy that lost precious friends in the Nova Festival, and he went into the Nova Festival. He claimed that he murdered 10 Israelis there. Among them are their friends. And he used to make fun of it and laugh on them about what
How did
happened
they
there.
respond? I think maybe it's important to tell our audience that Guy and Evyatar are good friends since, like, best friends since they're like children or toddlers even.
Yeah.
Um, so when you met them, they came as like best buddies, best friends,
Hmm.
BFFs that were captured together from the Nova Music Festival. They only went there to have fun, to
To
party, to
celebrate,
hear
yeah.
music, to celebrate. Evyatar is a musician,
Also, Guy.
and
Yeah.
also Guy, yeah. So how is it like for them being there in that situation? They're together, so I guess this is a little bit comforting, the fact that they're held together. But how is it like for them hearing, let's say, this terrorist bragging about murdering their friends?
So, you know, in the first 2 weeks of their captivity, they were shackled with zip ties, like military zip ties, with their hand and legs, the hand behind the back and in the legs. They were kept with black bags on their heads and weren't allowed to speak to one another. And after 2 weeks, the terrorists decided that they can speak to one each other, and they just lay lay on the floor and looked one each other in the eyes and was so happy and appreciated the fact that at least they are together in this hell. And this is something that they took with them all the way. I mean, their friendship and love to one each other was something that gave them a lot of strength. But to hearing about their friends and people around them that they didn't know if they were murdered or not, it's a tremendous stress and sorrow, you know. Guy's brother also was in the Nova, and until today, Guy doesn't know that his brother is alive. I mean, we thought that he didn't make it to escape the Nova, and he don't know, and from time to time he just entering like a depression because he lost his brother, and uh, in captivity and definitely inside the tunnels, your inner thoughts and emotions like completely overwhelm you because there is nothing else to do there except to just face whatever you are believing in the moment. So every depression, it's like a deep depression, and every pain, it's like extremely painful, and the starvation, it's like painful in all of the body, and it doesn't give any rest and any
You
thought about.
lost 27 kilos,
Yeah,
which
uh,
is somewhere around 60 some pounds, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You can
It's
see me
crazy.
now. I already gained 24 kilos back, so I don't show it, but I lost pretty much. And you know, when Eli Sharabi and Oad Cohen and Or Levi were released, the world was shocked on how they looked like. And the day after, they started to give us much more food because they knew that in 2 weeks we will be released also.
And then
Uh,
they didn't want the world to see how much they've been torturing you.
yeah, but they came back to this same psychological warfare now with Evyatar and Gaia and probably the rest of the hostages, just starving them to death.
I remember my grandfather telling me he was a Holocaust survivor, Auschwitz-Birkenau survivor. He survived Auschwitz, and then he survived the death walks, and then he survived more camps. And I remember he telling me that in one camp, when they walked through, a lot of people, for the first time in a very long while, there was a mirror. So he was able to see himself. And then for the very first time, he realized he looked like a skeleton.
Yeah,
And I guess that moment for you is also terrifying while you saw yourself for the first time in a mirror, in front of a mirror in Israel when you got back, or and also it's terrifying for you to see him that way because he's much thinner than you last saw him.
yeah, he's really looks like a living skeleton now. And immediately when I saw it, the first picture was that brought to my mind was the people in the Holocaust looking exactly the same. And you know what is shocking me the most about my captivity is that people that survived the Holocaust, that heard the story, heard the Eli Sharabi story, or Ad Cohen story, and so on with other hostages, they describe that what we went through is absolutely much more extreme than what they went through. And it's boggled my mind that today in 2025 we are still fighting for our existence and going through this horrible evil that is unleashing upon us. And I mean, I hate to do these comparisons because it's not in quantity, but in quality,
Of
it's
course, no,
exactly
no,
the
we're just
same.
talking
Yeah,
about just about the specific starvation of the hostages and their weight loss,
yeah,
and yeah, this is something that you can't not think about
Yeah,
when you see these images. Did they ever try to tell you what to say in front of the camera?
all the time. I mean, every time that we've been in front of a camera, it was organized propaganda and psychological warfare. I mean, everything that Evyatar said in this video is for propaganda. But the fact is that they starved him almost to death, and he actually needed to dig his own grave for their use. And I could see in his eyes that he's actually believing now that he will end his life in this grave that he's digging.
Was it hard for you to open the video? I guess you got it on WhatsApp or something. Was it hard for you to click on it?
No, because I didn't thought that it will be so worse, so extreme. I mean, I believed and I wanted to believe that when Omer Venkert and me, when we were released from the captivity, at least Hamas will take the whole amount of food that we shared for the of us and will give it to Guy and Evyatar. But actually, what happened is that they gave him even less and less, to the extent of days after days without food at all. And it was really shocking to see it. I didn't expect such views and like to see him like that.
Do you think that he gets any kind of medical attention? I mean, when he looks that way, he probably needs to see a doctor or a nurse. Did you ever get to see anyone, any medical personality?
So the only time we saw a doctor was when we suffered, both of us suffered from scurvy, and we were immobile for more than a month and a half. We just could not move. We seated on the mattresses, and every walk to the hall, which served us as a toilet, would come with tremendous pain. And then they understood that they need to bring a doctor, and they brought one. But other than that, we didn't saw anyone. And as far as I can say, I don't think that he received a doctor or any other hostage, for that matter.
I believe you saw what President Trump said about the video. He was shocked and also it was very emotional about it.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to tell President Trump as a person who was there with Evyatar David in Hamas tunnels that was held in captivity with him?
So I want to say that first I want to thank President Trump for all the efforts that he and his administration did for the hostages and for releasing us. The terrorists told us in the tunnels, because we didn't have news, they told us that President Trump was elected, and I was really, really glad about it because I knew that now there is a real chance that we will be home soon. And eventually, only 2 months after, I was released. So I really want to thank him about it. But right now, he's taking his frustration and anger on Hamas and seems to allow Israel to go to even a wider operation, a military operation in Gaza, but I fear that the hostages doesn't have the time left in their circumstance right now to like hold another month or two or even more, and it will be much better if Trump will put the pressure on Qatar to pressure Hamas to come back to the negotiation talks, to disarm, and to finish the war with a deal that we can live with.
And Steve Witkoff was in Israel while the video was released, and he came to the hostage square in Tel Aviv Did you hear about that meeting? Did you hear about his efforts to get a deal done?
Yeah, so I don't want to talk specifically about Witkoff because I also met him, and I know that things that are said in meetings should stay there. But I know that he's truly like he's trying from his deepest of his heart. He take really like he's caring really much about the families and about the hostages, and I know that it's really important to him. But as I said before, I think that if they will put all of their pressure on Qatar, we will have much more success with what is going on here. Because in the end, Qatar is playing like a double sword game, which they try to pretend that they are the good guys and they're helpful in what is going on, but they are funding Hamas and funding campaigns against Israel and doing everything in their power to sabotage our possibility to get real peace in the Middle East. So it's need to start from Qatar and then to Hamas and put the all pressure to disarm Hamas and finish the deal,
By
like
the
a
way, how is
complete
it like?
ceasefire.
So you think they should the main thing now that Israel, the U.S., the negotiators, Qatar, Egypt, Hamas, they should all go for a hostage ceasefire deal.
Yeah, but first and most important, they need to put pressure on Hamas to give supplies and medical care and food to the hostages, so there will be hostages left, to living hostages at least, to be released in a deal and not
To save.
50 deceased hostages. Yeah.
Yeah. How is it like, by the way, emotionally? You don't need to tell me details, but how is it like emotionally to meet Steve Witkoff? I know how much he cares. You talked about it. Um, is it like meeting your savior in a sense?
So when I met him, it was in the whole purpose of trying to help Evyatar and Guy and the other hostages faith. So I'm really emotionally not only with Mr. Witkoff, but in my own life, I put everything aside and completely focus on the hostages in one side and my children, which also were in captivity on the other side. So the time for me to feel something regarding myself will be just after everything will be finished and the hostages will return home.
How do you combine both? Being a father of, you know what? How do you combine the three things? Being a former hostage, being the father of former small little hostages that were in captivity,
Mm.
and still your third mission, or even the first one at this moment, you can tell me, taking care of the ones that were left behind.
So I was really lucky that my family survived captivity and the massacre on October 7th. And it's been said that because there is someone to take care of, it's actually really helpful to to not go through the post-trauma phases and to keep strength in the process of recovery, and I believe it to be true. So the fact that I have a mission to take care of my family, and I have a mission to assist and help in every way I have to the remain hostages, it's actually really helpful in my own recovery. but in the end, things will catch up, and eventually I will need to deal with my own fears about what could happen, and things that I went through and were inhumane at the least. So I keeping one open eye to the processes and feelings and things that going on inside me to see that I'm not falling apart. So
Are you talking to your children about captivity? Are you asking them
yeah.
about it? Are they asking you?
So even before October 7th, we were really truly and like honest with our children, and we try to talk in their eye level. At least this is how we say it in Hebrew. But um, after we were released, and also before I was released, it's an open discussion in our home, and if they have something to bring to the table, they can share it, and we will listen and talk about it. And I share with them parts of my captivity. But of course, the nasty and cruel parts, I prefer not to share with them because they have already nightmares, and like they just regain like trust in the world, and I don't want to put more cruelty upon them. So those parts I keep to myself and my wife.
Do, do they know that there are people that are still hostages?
Yeah, they know that I've been with Evyatar and Guy, and they see the pictures of other hostages. They know that there are four more fathers there that have children in their age that are still waiting for their father to come back. And yeah, okay, we cannot escape it, and we actually don't want to escape it. I mean, this is the reality we're living in. And it's also part of the problem, because my daughter was only 3 years old when she was kidnapped. Even if she knows that the terrorists took me, deep inside, I just vanished. I mean, her consciousness in that time could not like hold the idea that it's not that it's something that was upon us. Yeah. So it's take time to gain trust again, and she's really angry on me that I'm speaking all the time about Guy and Igatal because she wants her father to herself, and it's part of the complexity of recovery from this nightmare.
Before we finish, do you want to say something about Israel's plans regarding Gaza? Is there anything you'd like to say about that?
I'm not a political person. I never been. And I know that I don't know the whole story, and I don't know the things that are brought up in the closed rooms inside the government and the IDF. But I fear that going to a wide operation like they're playing will eventually give no opportunity to living hostages to see their loved ones again. Because as it seems from Evyatar video, they don't have enough time to spare, and this is like fear me the most, and I'm really sad about it. So I hope that they will find another way to end this war, because the war didn't start on October 7th, and it's like hundreds of years old, and it won't end by just ruin Hamas infrastructure inside Gaza. There is another way, and the other way is to get a deal that Israel can live with. And afterwards fight another war, and Israel can still have the right to fight physical war against a terror organization, but to do it much more smartly and in a more whole way.
Tal Shoham, thank you so much for talking to us.
Yeah, thank you, Maria, for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining the Crowds Report. If you liked this episode, click subscribe and join us.